Okay,
We all
you can start
set?
anytime.
Okay. All right, so we'll call to order the Planning Commission regular session. Can we do a roll call?
Liberty Avila,
Here.
David Pelley,
Here.
Max Kolkuff,
Here.
Matthew Gowerty, and Gary Willard are absent excused.
Great. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda?
You're not.
Okay. Can we consider approving the minutes of the May 6, 2025 meeting?
Since I wasn't here, I'm not gonna make a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes of our May 2020 meeting.
I'd second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Is anyone here to talk about anything that's not on the agenda? It's not part of the one
Why are you
hearing.
looking it up?
It's public comment time. All right, so no public comments that aren't maybe part of the public hearing. So we can go ahead and go to the hearing. So we will open the public hearing for file number 01-CON-25. Can we have the rules of order?
Yes. The Planning Commission will conduct one quasi-judicial public hearing tonight to consider a zone change designation, file number 01-ZON-25, applicants Paul Swigert and Clint Troyer. The hearing will proceed as follows. The chairperson will request the staff report, which includes applicable criteria and standards for the issue under consideration in the application. As part of the staff report, the applicant may have the opportunity to address the commission prior to public testimony. The chairperson will then ask for public testimony relating to the application. The chairperson may state a time limit for testimony. If no time limit is announced, testimony will be limited to 3 minutes. All testimony must be directed toward the applicable criteria. Oregon land use law requires that all issues raised by a participant during the hearing must be sufficiently clear and specific to allow the hearing body and other parties an opportunity to respond to those issues. Failure to raise the issues during the hearing may invalidate a future appeal. Though the order of testimony this evening will begin with that of proponents, those in favor, followed by opponents, those opposed, and ending with those neutral. An opportunity wherein any participant may request a continuation of the hearing. Any participant may request that the hearing record be kept open for 7 days to submit additional written evidence or testimony for the purpose of responding to new evidence. Unless waived, the applicant has 7 days to submit a written response. The proceedings are being electronically recorded to be converted to written minutes. When testifying, please step to the podium and state your name. Members of the Planning Commission may ask questions of the staff or hearing participants if present at any time. The chairperson will then close the hearing or continue the hearing at a specified time and place. All decisions must be based on findings of fact from the staff report or evidence and testimony received which relate to the criteria of the land use decision. A commissioner must declare any ex parte or pre-hearing contact, including the person's name and the nature of the discussion, as well as any site visitations to the area in question. Commissioners should declare any personal or financial interest in this matter and may disqualify themselves from participation in this hearing. Does any commissioner wish to make a declaration? Let the record show there are none. Does anyone in the audience wish to challenge the right of any commissioner to hear this matter? And let the record show there are none.
All right, thank you. Can we get the staff report?
Yeah, so I'm just going to hit the highlights of your report, at least the items that I think are important, and then if you want to dive into other stuff. So this is a request to rezone only the areas that are in the light blue of the Swigert property and the Troyer property. And combine the total property area of these two properties, or there's actually 3 tax lots, it's 43 acres, but the blue area amounts to roughly 21 acres out of that combined ownership. And the maps that I'm going to kind of go through just kind of identify the conditions of the site related to topography and wetlands and other development constraints. But I think importantly for at least the state's review of the rezone, they generally look at our buildable lands inventory. And we have, jump to which page, so on page 9 of your staff report is kind of 8 and 9 is a summary of what the buildable lands inventory has for our next 20 years. And we have roughly a 212 acre surplus of residential lands in our inventory. And of the, for this rezone, we're roughly looking at a density of 10 units that we're going to lose through the rezone from the low density residential to the rural residential. And so we're still going to have over a 200 unit surplus in our inventory with this rezone. So I point that out just because there are housing advocates at the state level that pay attention to this, and they want to make sure we don't go negative. And so I've included that in the staff report, and those agencies have had the opportunity to review it. They typically do get copies of our report, and they haven't reached out on this rezone, which they typically reach out even on our commercial ones. And so let me go through the maps. Did you have a question, Max, on?
I was just curious what so there's our surplus is 200 in the whole city.
Yes.
If the zoning stayed the same, how many units could you build on this parcel? And if the zoning changes, how many units can you build on this parcel?
So roughly what I've estimated on for this property is if you had the current R1 zone would support 52 dwelling units, and under the rural residential zone 42 units. But that's without taking into consideration all of the wetlands and all of the other issues that I'm going to go through. Because by the time you take those things into consideration, there's a significantly less number of dwelling units that would physically be supported by the property. So anyway, so this first map is the, just kind of gives you an illustration of where the property is. I've done another map that kind of shows you what the before and after would look like. So all the light blue is now going to be dark green. It does create an island for one piece of property that was not included in this rezone. That's going to stay the same zoning. So on this property, this is an illustration of how much potential wetland affects the properties as a whole, which gives you a really good indication of these are areas that when we do our buildable lands inventory, that you would actually subtract those as non-buildable portions. This map gives you an idea of the topography. You'll see in the application it talks about percentages of slope, like over 26% on average. I did some general math. It's kind of hard to read, but on Paul's property, it's roughly a 17% average through portions. You have 25% and greater, just at the base of the Spence Reservoir where the dam is. And then once you get below that, then you're looking at a 14% slope on average through this portion. You've got a 17%. Clint, I think, wants to put a house up here in this upper section. But he's got a 17% to get through, and then there's a 14%. And just to give you kind of an indication of the typical slope that's in this zone is the properties along 12th Street are roughly about a 2 to 5% slope. So that's the difference that they're dealing with topography-wise, which may not affect your house placement as much as it affects where you're going to put infrastructure, where you're going to build roads, and how much space does that take up as you're dealing with cut and fill the
What's
snow level.
what's it look like there to the north on the ridge?
These ones here,
No, just north of that panhandle.
up here,
Yeah.
this is actually steeper. This is probably closer to a 17% slope. And
That's that ridge development.
yeah, and they're an R2 zone, so they're actually twice the density of what the R1 zone has in what the code promotes, and they got a variance because of topography to actually do something very similar to the RR1 zone at a 2 unit per acre. They've got 18 units in that subdivision where they should have about 40 or 50 units. And it's all because of topography and how that road had to be structured in order to be able to justify their variance. I think that's my last map. So these are the key factors that Paul relied on in his application for why the property isn't suitable for the R1 zone that has historically been applied to this property, and why the RR1, that rural residential zone, is more suitable. The other piece that goes with this, that is, I think, less of a factor for your consideration, but very important to the property owners, is they would like to have livestock uses on these properties. And yeah, the RR1 zone would support that, where the light blue, the R1 zone does not. So anyway, so that's what I have to share with you. Do you have any questions of what I've presented, or is there something that I skipped over that you'd like to hit on?
Just want to check my understanding. I guess I always thought of zoning as limiting how many units you could build on a piece of land, not requiring you to build a certain number of units on a piece of land. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And am I incorrect in, because it sounds, the way you're talking about this change, it sounds more like the issue is whether the owners of the land would be forced to build more density, or whether they could build less density.
Yeah, so we don't force folks to build at any level, but we force them to plan at that level. And so it's just the way Oregon law kind of forces us to govern our zoning, is we have an obligation to promote and pack people into the city, where the county has an obligation to do the opposite, is to keep people out of the county. And so it's, because they're preserving farm and forest land, and we're, so that's just the way Oregon land use works, is they want to preserve farm and forest, and so they want to keep people out of the county in order to preserve that and push everybody into the city. So it kind of forces us to plan for the highest densities possible. And so with that, as we do zoning, there's a density assigned to that zone, and then we have a responsibility under Oregon land use law to ensure that ultimately over time that those zones get built to the density that is targeted for those zones. And so that's what the buildable lands inventory is about, and that's where the housing agencies essentially look at our land use, say, are you managing your land use according to Oregon law and properly planning for the densities. And so Paul's aware, because as he went through and placed his house on his property, he actually did a land division to create an extra parcel, and as part of that, he went through a master plan exercise to show under the R1 zone, how can I build my house on this property and preserve enough land area around there to still hit the target density that is on there. And it, honestly, depending on who looks at it, it's not a very desirable layout. It certainly wouldn't be desirable for Paul to see his property develop in the way it's master planned, but it is feasible, and that was the exercise that he went through. But anyway, to answer your question, we are required to plan for it, but we don't require folks to actually build it.
So would the landowners be permitted to build at the lower density even with the existing zoning?
They would, and they have. So they would and they have. But as they go to divide their property, whether it's a lot line adjustment, whether it's a partition, is they are required to go through a master plan process in order to show how their property could ultimately be further divided and further developed to hit the density that the zone requires, and still support what they want to do today. And so that's the exercise Paul went through. So he's actually developing to that rural residential standard, but the property is planned for higher density just because the code requires that.
Any other questions before we hear from the applicant?
So, just to refresh my memory, what are those numbers for R1 and RR1?
So the R1, let me just go up to the map so that way as I refer to the colors it makes sense. So the light blue is the R1, that is a 4 to 6 unit per acre density. The RR1 is essentially a 2 unit per acre.
Okay.
All right. Do you want to say anything about your application?
I don't know if I do.
It's okay. You don't have to.
Well, I'd like to, my thing is I just kind of want to preserve, I don't know, maybe I should just read what I wrote out here, but we got that to more or less kind of preserve the property, not to profit off of it. We like the rural feel that it is instead of yeah, like you're saying, it was an exercise to get through what we want to do. We have a couple of horses. We have livestock all around us. And it just feels like the responsible thing to do is to bring it back to rural residential. Because if it's not, then it's going to be a 4 to 6 units per, then we're essentially move ourselves out in the long term. And it just doesn't feel right to have it at that, medium density. I feel like it's a way to preserve the land the way it is. That's my 2 cents on it. And I can go in a lot more detail, but that's ultimately what we're trying to do is not build a bunch of houses. And I got support behind me in that. So. Any questions? Something I could touch on, or is there anything that I'm kind of?
I guess I'll ask, so what will the change in zoning enable you to do that you wouldn't be permitted to
So
do?
my daughter has 2 horses. We'll be able to have the horses up there versus have them up there, and if a neighbor gets mad at me, they can turn me in. That's really, we'll have, that cloud over us all the time, and that's just the stress we don't want. We don't want to break any rules, and we're just trying to do the right thing. Yeah.
So the one thing that I'm thinking about here is that that piece sticking off to the north that's going to end up putting the RR1 up against the R2, which seems like potential for future problems. Is there a way maybe just to keep, would it be a problem just to have that rectangle of northern property stay R1 and the rest of it be RR1?
I'll speak for Clint on that. And you might know better than me, but I think he does. It seems like he was wanting to develop a little bit of
Yeah,
that.
I'll address that. He's in the process of developing a subdivision that's much like the Ridge subdivision, the
It's exactly
second
what you're
phase.
saying, yeah.
And it's proposed at that 2 unit per acre at the RR1, and he's going to be coming in at some point in the near future. I'm surprised he's not in here yet, but he's getting close to having his subdivision designed. And he'll be asking as part of that for variance, and so I didn't want to get into the details, but he's going to be asking for a variance because he is dealing with wetlands on his property, which forces him to change how he deals with the density because he has to work around an intermittent kind of a pond or wet spot. And then by the time he's got a 100-foot power line that runs through the northern part, and then by the time you put the road, a 60-foot wide street in there, meeting city standards with a turnaround at the end, it consumes a lot of land.
And that's another point I want to bring up is the infrastructure load that is required if you do build that out, and what he's having to do to keep it at that zone is very costly.
Yeah, and it's just hard to fit. It's just hard to fit because of topography, so you have to, you've got a windy road instead of a straight road, and there's just a lot of extra things that go into that.
It is flatter than the rest of the stuff.
Yeah. So anyway, so he's asking for the rezone, which is going to help because that's going to probably eliminate the variance he's going to have to ask for on the density, because otherwise he's planning to, come in with a proposal to either meet the RR1 zone or ask you for a variance to reduce the density because of all of these characteristics of his property.
Yeah, so then the only real difference will end up being horses or no horses.
Yeah,
Yeah, if it's R1 versus RR1.
yeah.
What are the red dotted segments?
So the red dotted, that's actually the city limits, and there's a number of little pockets that are in the county urban growth boundary that are surrounded by city limits in this general location. So that's why you kind of see them all over along 12th Street, but
It's hard to figure out.
it is.
So those aren't subject to the city zoning?
No, they are.
They are.
Yeah, so they're in our urban growth boundary, so they have city zones applied to them. The benefit of those properties, they can have wells and septic systems, and their taxes go to the county, and the city does not generate revenue off of those, based on property taxes anyway.
But if it's outside of that yellow boundary heading down towards Geckler, it is currently R1.
This is R2, is this piece right here.
Okay, but the other bits that are
Yes.
these bits.
So as you head 12th Street anyway, it's R1, but as you head to Geckler, it's R2.
Got it. Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah, that side of Gettler's store too.
Does anyone here want to give any comment on this application or speak about it?
Well,
Well, I guess I'm not real sure where it is that Clint's thinking of building. Is it quite a ways away from the pond?
Yeah, it's at the bottom of the panhandle there,
Let me-
Okay,
right by the ridge, the extension of the ridge.
kind of where that dip
I
is.
think he wants to be right in this vicinity.
Where the
That's
overflow
the
used to run
overflow
down.
is.
Oh, where
into-
he's building or what he's wanting to put?
What he's
Lots.
wanting to put lots in.
Lots would be.
Oh, that's this upper section here. It's
Oh, okay,
kind of behind Barney's house, if that
okay.
helps.
our concern is, my name's Jack Martin, my concern is the dam and preservation of that area, because that's been in there forever.
And it's just an earthen dam.
And it's an earthen dam, and we're quite concerned about that issue. We vote on that.
What's your concern?
The dam, there's a dam along there.
What about the dam?
I'm concerned about development below that or
Oh.
anywhere.
Because it's not overly stable, we don't think.
Probably not.
And there's a lot of wildlife through there.
Yeah, there's a lot of elk and deer. yeah.
Elk and deer and eagles and,
Every
That's
kind
my
of animal you
concern,
can think of
is
is in
fish
there.
and wildlife or any part of wildlife been asked about the
Can
development of all that?
I need to get names if you're
Renee
gonna
Wise.
provide testimony. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm organized.
No, so Fish and Wildlife doesn't have jurisdiction over this area because it's in the city limits. And so we don't protect fish and wildlife within the city. But, but with that said, we do, I guess, manage and protect wetlands. And so just to give you, let me go to the wetland map, just to show you this little piece, Clint had delineated and wanted this to go away so that he could fill it in and he could build on. And when he went through the process after he had it delineated, Working Fish and Wildlife wanted over $200,000
To do
to
that.
make that go away.
oh,
And so he's keeping it. And that's that little piece. So as you start to look at the rest of this, at
Oh,
least,
boy.
I don't think Clint has any intention of developing anything below the pond. And in fact, he wants to keep all of this as one big piece, and he's only looking to develop this lower
Okay.
section. And it's because of the wetland. So I think your concerns of not wanting to see development below you, at least with Clint's plans anyway, will achieve that.
okay.
And
Yeah, at
Clint
least-
also has livestock. That's another big.
Yeah.
thing, too.
And so anyway, so from the fish and wildlife, at least the wildlife standpoint, it'll stay open space and hopefully he has a nice house that when you're looking down the hill and you see it, hopefully it looks nice.
So $200,000, that was the cost of mitigation for
Just this,
replacing or
just to make it go
improving
away.
some other,
Yeah, just to make it go away.
interesting.
Yeah, so as he's like looking at some of this other stuff, it's expensive. It's expensive. The state puts a big price tag on that because they don't want to see it go away.
Well, there's lots of animals up there, bird life and elk and deer, and it would be a shame that the development would ruin their habitat.
Yeah.
Well, it is on the edge of town, and that is sort of the way town goes, right? It's eventually gonna start pushing up against that stuff. We've already, that's why we got deer in town, isn't it?
But at one time, there was a proposal to run a road to tie into Gilcrest. Is that still on the table or below the dam there?
Well, in theory, but I think the price tag to make, try to get through the wetlands is a nightmare, and so I know our Public Works Department does not want to put it where it was planned in the 80s, in early 90s, so it's planned on a map, so we have it on a transportation plan. But I don't anticipate it's ever going to go in that location that's reflected, and at least not as a road. I know that there is a desire to run a water main line from the 2nd Street area over to 12th Street and somehow get around this, because they don't want to go through that either. They have to deal with the wetlands. But they really need to get water over to 12th Street at some point in time to support development, but I don't think they've gotten far enough to design to figure out how it's going to get there. Because there's a lot of hurdles that are, essentially barriers that are cost prohibitive even for our public works folks.
All right, anyone else? All right. Okay, so commission discussion.
Well, the only thing I see here that bothers me is putting that RR1 up against R2. And if there was a way, I mean, it seems like that little north panhandle piece, if that stayed R1, that would solve that problem. That's really the only thing I see here from my point of view.
Is that good for me to ask a question about that, or no?
I think we'll discuss some
I'm
of them. We
sorry.
might ask you more specifically. Yeah, I'm curious if in effect, it'll kind of look like that same sort of gradient, since the development would have to be pushed down to that lower side, even if it meets the standard. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, so the Ridge subdivision already had a variance to develop to a lower density. So while I think the concern is valid as you're looking at, the color match of the rural residential to the R2, in theory, I think that's valid, but I think in practice, what you at least have for the Ridge subdivision is you have a much lower density that was actually built when they built that development. They didn't build it to the R2 density. So the transition is not really the same.
The only thing, and it's not the density as much as livestock. Just having livestock,
Right.
and people have, smell, flies, whatever, across their fence, if that's gonna get under their skin.
Yeah, and
Question.
and I don't know, I know that they did receive public notice, had the opportunity to come, and there are currently livestock in interface areas like that, but we have livestock even within our city limits and other places that,
Yeah, that's grandfathered.
yeah, so I don't know if the impact, for your typical residential development, to somebody who's gonna have a small farm or, small amount of livestock is gonna have that level of impact as somebody that's raising cattle on their property, but.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't be that. I mean, if he's proposing a development in there and it's gonna be like an extension of the ridge, then, yeah, it's probably not gonna be, livestock's not gonna be much of an issue, but then why do the RR1? Why not leave it R1?
Yeah, well, and that's a choice that you have. You could certainly pull that tax lot out of the rezone. But
We would get a chance to address that issue when the plan for that development comes to us, right?
yeah,
If-
he'll
if
be
we-
applying for variance, and essentially, he's gonna be asking for the density that the rezone would provide, so it's really up to you how you wanna deal with that.
So we could tonight vote to change the zoning, basically, I don't know how to describe it, but the line that goes straight across
Yeah,
the little pond, yeah.
this one right here, yeah, and these are all,
And
we
then-
have separate
and
tax lots.
excise that other lot and then address that lot when there's a specific plan for how it's gonna be developed.
You could go the route of supporting a variance instead of the rezone, and that would, the only difference is the livestock component.
And this is going to the city council anyway, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And the livestock component, I think depends a lot on what those lots look like. Right, if those houses, well, I guess the houses are built closer to those houses on Ridge and the pasture is further up the canyon, that's a lot different than the vice versa, right?
yeah, I mean, if he's designing 1/2 to 3/4 acre lots is kind of on average. I mean, they're a mixed match of lots, but they're
When we're
roughly.
talking livestock, we're really talking horses, we're not really talking cattle.
Well,
Right.
I suppose, what is included in livestock? I mean, I doubt anybody's gonna raise hogs, but it is possible.
No,
to do
we
that.
don't allow that in the city.
That's not, okay.
Right, so you're pretty much talking chickens, goats, horses, cows, llamas.
Okay.
They're all lumped
I've
under
heard there's some
livestock.
chickens on lots that are less than.
What?
What is it, 10,000 square feet?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's the difference that you'll see, and by excluding that is they'll likely come and ask for the variance, and you'll be looking at essentially the exact same development under a variance, just without livestock. You know, and if this is important to him, then he can come to city council
Yeah,
and lobby
plead his case
to
for,
include it.
yeah. That would be my recommendation, though. I'd listen to you guys or anybody else that has thoughts on it.
Yeah, I guess I am curious about the process because, you know, we have one applicant here with us, the smallest amount of land in, in this. Did we receive anything about, you know, from the other, I guess not the other applicant, but the other property owner?
I did not, he's just bundled in Paul's application as supporting for his entire property to
Okay.
be
Yeah.
included.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
lumped in.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it doesn't change the application if you vote to remove it. The application will still move forward just like this, but it'll just include your recommendation to exclude it, so the council can then weigh that with the property owner if he attends the council and asks for it to remain included. But,
Yeah, I guess I don't feel as strongly about excluding that parcel only because we're hearing that folks want less development in that area. We have a lot of other, you know, we have a lot of other buildable land. I mean, in most areas of the city, I'm all about more density, but it seems like here, given the topography, the wildlife, it being on the edge, I feel personally okay with going forward as it is. But if if you feel strongly about it, I'd also support treating it separately.
Well, it is a flatter piece too, so it's that,
Yeah.
so the constraints, the wetland is a smaller bit and the topography is less of an issue. It is, I guess, still a little bit of an issue on that one side.
Yeah, I'm
That's
fine with
kinda how
excluding
I
it if
feel
that's
about
what people
I mean, it is-
prefer. Yeah.
We'll let the city council hash it over.
I guess
Yeah.
I don't feel that strongly about that, but if I'm the deciding vote, and it sounds like I might be, I think that I would come down on pushing it to like, I don't see why we would make a decision now when we don't have a specific plan for how the land would be used in front of us. We would know more when we have the specific plan, and it doesn't seem to, does it create any additional does that make it any harder for a person trying to build housing there? Because that is something.
I don't think so, because this is just a request that is
Yeah.
One thing I've learned is
separate from the development.
maybe one of the things I've learned in the last year is that it's really hard to build. So
Yeah.
I don't like to do things that are going to make it harder for housing
Yeah.
just because we need housing.
Yeah, well, I know Clint started his planning process for subdividing that northern piece before the rezone even became an idea.
Okay.
And so your decision on the rezone, you know,
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna have any influence on his planning for moving forward with the subdivision.
Yeah. I mean, even though they didn't come to voice their opinions, those folks on Ridge Road, I feel like deserve as much protection as possible, so we should at least know whether we're talking about putting cattle right, what kind of livestock we're talking about and how close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
I
Yeah,
got
he
a
wants
list,
to.
I got a whole list of all the neighbors, as well as verbal confirmation that they're very in support of this move to RR1. I emailed that to Mike.
Yeah, you have
Did
that
that
letter
get
in your
submitted,
packets.
actually? I didn't realize there was a.
And I got a verbal from Romer, he's somewhere along the ridge there, because he got one of the letters. His son, the electrician, was up and said,
Oh,
hey,
okay.
he's all for it. One of the neighbors, so I got all but one is, they're all supportive, but they weren't all able to show up, and some were out of town, I wasn't able to get a signature, but as far as I was very blunt with them with what we're trying to do. And some of them are on the ridge, that got the letter and had full support in this, just because they don't want to see, a ton of homes going in there. And we're not
Sure.
trying to not build homes, and we're just trying to, limit it a little bit.
Makes sense. You're Paul?
I'm Paul.
Okay. And this doesn't actually say anything about Troyer on this signature sheet.
He supports it.
But no, it says, we support the request of Paul Swigert.
Right, because I was the one that did the legwork on it.
Right.
He's working out of town, wasn't
Do
he?
they know about the rest of this, is the question?
Yes, yep, it's the one, it's a whole, I showed him the whole thing. So
Oh,
it was
okay.
all the neighbors to the, what would be the east, and then Verbal, and I got Barney on there, which is kind of in the middle there, and then I got,
Yeah, so this is Barney's property.
yeah, and then to north is Romer is somewhere in there.
Like, I'm gonna ask you a strangely worded question. Tell me why I shouldn't be concerned about all of the periphery of town being built, being zoned lower density and being built, and sort of constraining how much space we've got inside town as we do need more housing. Does that make sense? Because it seems
Yeah.
like all of these, what do we call them, peri-urban,
Like,
rural
well, the
interface properties are, they're desirable, let's be real, like, people want to live there, there's good views.
well, they are, and I haven't got in, because I'm not part of the fire chief
Yeah.
component, but there's a whole component of urban fire interface that, you know, we're not talking about here tonight that probably is a valid element of this rezone. Because there's a whole movement of trying to minimize development in that, I think it's just called the urban interface,
Yeah.
that.
Wildland and urban interface.
Yeah, because those are homes that are at much higher risk of fire. And,
Yeah.
so that's, I think that's a reason that if we brought the right people in the room, they would do whatever they could to convince you to support a rezone.
To
Maybe
have
even
fewer houses.
Yeah, and maybe even to a density that would even be less than 2. Because they would prefer to see nothing. And just allow folks to have what they have out there and preserve it because of that fire risk. And so, and it is hillside, we do have erosion, and so besides fire, we have erosion issues and other things that as you develop that, then you create more potential for folks on the downhill side to receive, higher impacts. And so there's a number of things to consider that kind of go with this. But I just gave you just based on the information that we know, as opposed to, what theories are that folks have out there.
So are there, the number you cited at the outset around the 200 and something units? So if I'm understanding that, what you're saying is in the rest of our boundaries, there's enough unbuilt space for 200 more housing units?
There's enough space for a lot more than 200. That's just at the minimum density.
So if it was all built to just the minimum, it would be a 200?
It would probably be more than that. We have 200 acres of surplus. So that's the surplus that we have. We have a 300 and some acre need, and we have 200 acres of surplus above that.
So if somebody came along and wanted to build townhouses or stuff like that True Avenue, like, the lower end of cost housing of our area, that your sense is there's not a dearth of land, like that's not the constraining factor.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the constraint is land that's for sale, but as far as the available land in our jurisdiction, there's no constraints whatsoever. We can support pretty much any type of development that comes to our community, assuming somebody's willing to sell their property. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, I think that was why and I also am very in support of more housing, but is that the right location for it, given the wetlands, the fire risk and the erosion and topography?
Right.
We're not gonna get low-cost housing in that area anyway, given the building costs that would be on that, the slopes and everything.
Well, I also definitely feel like that we should develop, the reasonable approach is to have the highest density in the core and then have it less and less. And that's kind of what we're doing here. But there's just also part of my concern about having this one piece that's sticking in that would then be green, surrounded by white and blue, or pale blue and dark blue. living. You know, I mean,
Yeah, do you think that that plot that we're rezoning is significantly different than what's maybe just to the west of it?
I think it's the same, so the reason why the green line, or the green transition between the green and the light blue is what it is that's a 3,000 foot contour. And so at whatever point in time the zoning was created, generally the zoning follows property lines. And for whatever reason, it followed that 3,000 foot contour, and I believe it had to do with city water and sewer services. And city water has water pressure roughly to the 3,000 foot elevation. Once you get above that, we don't have enough pressure to support development. And so I think that's why that transition was there, is so that the light blue area, in theory, would be that higher density that we could support with city services. The darker green is, we can't really support, so is try to minimize development in those areas. But it didn't take into consideration at the time that those colors were done. It didn't take into consideration other factors like wetlands and other topography.
so does that mean that the RR1, you could have a well, a residential well?
No.
You cannot. It has to be city water. Okay, and city sewer.
Yeah. There's several houses that are in those that have well and stuff.
Sure.
But for new development, we just wouldn't allow development if it couldn't be served.
Well, now we're just all over this. Why is that in our interest? Why do we want people to be on our sewer and, like, if they're willing to dig their own well?
Because that's what supports your city is folks having city services, and you don't want wells and septics, and part of that is preserving the aquifer, and there's all kinds of reasons. But within the city it's our requirement as part of managing our urban growth boundary, and it's one of the exercises we go through now when we look at commercial and industrial, when we look at different expansion, is can you serve that? And if the answer is no, you can't. Like if we were to go back and have that exercise today, I bet you there's a lot of land in an urban growth boundary that would not be an urban growth boundary, because our answer would be no, we can't serve that. And so as we went through the exercise, we wouldn't be able to bring it in because we can't serve it.
Does any of that change any of your thoughts about that lower property, or do you still want to see that come up with a?
No, I'm gonna stick, if you guys
Okay.
wanna just go with it, then I'll just vote no and we can move on.
I'm fine with that coming up with an actual plan to it. I mean, especially if that's gonna happen. I don't like
It
to
seems
create
to me-
extra paperwork, but if there's some potential concerns,
It looks to me like the only issue is gonna be livestock or no livestock. And I just, it bugs me to have that RR1 bumping up against that R2.
Okay, are there any other,
I can make a motion.
okay, yeah, if you want to make a motion and we'll,
Do I have to make it as it's written, or can I?
You can make your own.
Freestyle.
You can freestyle it if you want, but it's helpful if you kind of use the motion, right? But I think to help you with your motion when it comes to that piece is I would just move to adopt the findings that are in the staff report, with the exception of removing that northern parcel. And that could be that generic, and I'll fix it from there.
I move that we accept the recommendations in the staff report with the amendment that we excise the lot that is close to Ridge Drive.
A second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Good. All right, so motion passes, and that's what we've got.
Thank you, guys.
But that's just a recommendation to city council. so-
I understand that.
You better start making a campaign donate now.
Yep, yeah. I'll make sure I'm back.
So October 8th.
October 8th.
October 8th at City Council, and if you don't mind, if you'll reach out to Clint and encourage him to
He
show
was
up.
supposed to be here. He texted me 2 hours ago. Where is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
No, I'll kick him off the thing. Thank you guys so much
Yeah,
for
you
your
bet.
time.
Thank you,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you all for coming, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Neighbors?
Do we know if we're, do we have other business?
Um,
And
I don't see any old business, is there any city planner comments?
Yeah, so our next meeting is October 14th,
Okay.
and we have at least 3 items planned, maybe 4.
Clint about spoiled it.
So anyway, it would be nice if we had more than a quorum, so we'll,
Hopefully get folks here.
I will not be here on
okay.
I'll be here.
As far as I know, I'll be here all,
Yeah, so we'll reach out to our other 2 commissioners and hopefully they'll be available.
yeah,
But,
that should work.
yeah, that's the only thing that I have. Oh, and then next month, you'll probably also have, our new city manager will probably show and
Oh, good.
introduce himself. He's probably not gonna stay, but he'll always pop in and introduce himself. He's trying to at least do that with each of our commissions. So at least that way,
He has started forestry today.
yeah, he's been on for, I think, 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
When does the new
2
fire
weeks.
chief start?
What's that?
When does the new fire chief start?
He's technically here, because he's our deputy fire chief,
Oh, right.
and so.
So when
So he's
will our
but
current chief?
officially, it'll
retire?
be, I think it's November 1st, is his official, you're on your own, and our current fire chief is officially retired, and so.
All right, any final commission comments?
What's this under correspondence?
Correspondence?
Oh, and reminder,
Yeah,
just the
I have no idea. I'm looking through my
commission,
binder.
advisory commission, yeah,
Something from the state?
yeah, creating advisory commissions is the ordinance
Okay.
resolutions on that. Like how many we're supposed to have for planning commission and who can live outside city limits, inside. I think planning commission has to be all city, but, was it landmarks? One can live out in the county.
Oh,
Oh, did you shut it off?
I did shut it off, it was glitching, so. You can say whatever you want now.
Okay.
You don't have to
Yeah, so it's
filter anymore.
Just information. It's just information. Yeah,
Cool.
Thank you.
if you wanna read it.
I just